Now, let's put our hands together. Let's give a big Connections 2014 welcome for the CEO of the Salesforce ExactTarget Marketing Cloud, Mr. Scott McCorkle.
Right here. Thank you, sir. Joel, thank you. Scott. Good morning. Hello, everybody. We made it. Day 3. How has Connections been? Good? All right. Well, we appreciate all your feedback. We look forward to more, and Connections is just getting better today. I have the honor this morning to introduce our next speaker, John Green. And John's list of accomplishments are large. So let me summarize a few for you here. You know that John is a best-selling author whose book, The Fault in Our Stars, was recently made into a major motion picture. It was just released on DVD this month, grossed more than $120 million. And John has a new book called Paper Towns that is currently being filmed, which is really, really cool. At one point this past year, John had 4 books that were simultaneously on the New York Times best-selling list. John was very gracious to give me some time to meet him and get to know him yesterday, and also to allow my 17-year-old daughter, Sarah, to meet him. The first words out of Sarah's mouth was, when she regained the ability to speak, the first words out of her mouth were how much she loves Crash Course. And John is really a video blogging sensation, which is how many of us know and got to know John. And Crash Course, 2.2 million subscribers. It's used in classrooms throughout the country and really presents world history in a fun and entertaining way. And I really got a kick out of that being the first words out of my daughter's mouth. I didn't expect that. I expected Fault of Stars. John has many, many more YouTube sensations, including Vlog Brothers, which he does with his brother Hank, 2.3 million subscribers. And they call themselves nerd fighters because they fight for intellectualism and world betterment. Again, the list is long. I can't wait to hear from John this morning. So, John, if we could please welcome you, everyone, John Green. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Good morning. This is very strange because my back is always going to be to some of you. Oh, I apologize. I tried to wear a nice suit so that when you're looking at my back, at least it's tailored. First, I want to thank all of you for going to bed promptly at 9:30 so that you could be fully energized to meet me this morning. That was classy of you, and I appreciate it. So I was a nerd when I was a kid. That's a picture of me from high school. You can tell that I'm a nerd by the glasses, the academic decathlon medals, the gold bow tie, general aura of fear. And when I was a kid, people would always give me the same advice. They would say, you just need to be yourself. If you could just be yourself, people would like you. And that's great advice, except I had no idea what it meant, and I still don't really know what it meant, because, like, from my perspective, the problem was that I was being myself, and that, like, myself was nerdy and thought gold bow ties were awesome. And that was the issue. Like, whose self could I otherwise be being? Was there a different self? Like, is there a way that I could embody a different self? Because if so, I was very interested in that possibility. And now we don't talk so much about being yourself. We talk about being authentic, right? Like, we all have heard that, I'm sure, in the last few days. Like, you have to be authentic with your online audience. You have to have an authentic relationship with your community of customers, which is also excellent advice that I also don't really know what it means. Like, you don't actually want to be that authentic because, for instance, it's totally authentic to go online and say, I think that you should buy this particular brand of paper towels, partly because I think that they are excellent and partly because my job is contingent upon you buying them. That's extremely authentic. But I'm not sure it's like the right kind of authenticity. So here are some videos of me trying to speak authentically to the audience of my video blog in 2007, 2009, 2012, and 2014.
Having the entire internet/television hardwired into your brain when you're an infant is a bad idea. But that doesn't necessarily mean that having Wikipedia inside your brain is a bad idea.
Oh my God, did I really say that? And then did I think that it was an acceptable thing to write down and then to keep for many years?
Today we're going to talk about civilizations, but in order to do that, we have to talk about talking about civilizations because it's a problematic word. So problematic, in fact, that I have to turn to camera 2.
Good morning, Hank. It's Tuesday. Henry requested today that I make a video about dragons and dinosaurs where they fight together against bad guys and there are scary parts, but not too many scary parts. And I then explained to him that sadly, I can only make videos where my head moves around a screen.
So all of those people are me, right? Like the guy who doesn't know that your head is supposed to occupy the top half of the screen and is wearing a beanie is me, and the guy who's yelling about the word civilization when maybe not yelling would have been an acceptable strategy is me. The guy who a few weeks ago was talking about his son, 4-year-old son, wanting to see a video about dragons with scary parts, but not too many scary parts. That was me as well. And what I've learned for many years on the internet and sort of having to go back with some measure of embarrassment and look at my past selves is that you don't become yourself. You don't become authentic. You become yourself over and over and over again. So I was a kid of the internet. My dad was an early subscriber to local bulletin board services, and then we had Prodigy and CompuServe. I remember the first time my dad brought home a modem. I was like 12 or 13, and he hooked it up, and there was the sound that we all remember, except for the young people, of the sound of my childhood, the only sound that makes me want to cry with joy and nostalgia. And I was like, well, what does it do? And my dad said, well, you can look up the weather in Dubai anytime you want. And I was like, well, that is the most boring thing I've ever heard. And he was like, also, it contains an encyclopedia inside of it. And I was like, oh my God, like that's more boring than the weather in Dubai. And then he said, oh, or you can also like talk to nerds, some of whom are girls. And I was like, this changes everything. Like, this internet thing is going to be a big deal. Because I loved talking to nerds, some of whom were girls. And so to me, the internet is not a series of tubes or a collection of ones and zeros. The internet, for me, is people connecting to each other. Like from the perspective of a user, I guess, Wikipedia is a website where you look things up and find out about things. But from the perspective of the people who write and edit Wikipedia, Wikipedia is a community. And it's a community of people who are doing something that they think is very important, and they get to do it with people they respect and like. And that's what I love about working online, and also what I love about life in general. I like talking about stuff that interests me with people who interest me, and I like making cool stuff with people I care about. Like, that's what I love doing. So when I was in like 4th grade, I think, I made a bench with my dad. This is one of my favorite memories. I made a bench with my dad, just like 2 pieces of a tree trunk and some 2x4s, and we spent all day making this bench because I was 9 and I wasn't a particularly good woodworker, unlike now. And by the time we'd finished, it was dark, and we sat down together on our bench, and it was this beautiful cloudless sky. And we looked up, and he pointed out to me Halley's Comet, and he told me everything that he knew about Halley's Comet, and I told him what I'd been learning about stars and constellations, and I had made something cool with someone I cared about, and then I was talking about stuff that mattered to me with someone who mattered to me, and it's one of my favorite memories. And on some level, everything I do online, from like Twitter to Tumblr to crash course videos to playing video game soccer, all of that is an attempt to recreate that feeling. That's what I want out of the internet. That's what I want out of my work. So my first book, Looking for Alaska, came out in 2005. It got good reviews. It won a big prize. I got to go on a book tour that no one attended. And in that first year, it sold about 3,000 copies. And that was really disappointing to me. It was disappointing to me partly because I had this dream that I was going to make a living being a writer, and those kind of sales don't get you there. But it was disappointing to me largely because I didn't feel anything like I was making a bench with my dad. Like I felt like I'd worked for years on this thing and then I had released it out into the world and it had fallen into an abyss. When in fact, 3,000 people is a lot of people. Like that's enough people to fill up Carnegie Hall. That's plenty of people. My dad is just one guy. It's 3,000 times larger than my dad. But I didn't feel connected to those people. You know, maybe occasionally they could get to me through email, but the special thing about books is that it's just scratches on a page until a reader can translate them into ideas that live in their head. That's what differentiates books, I think, from other media. The reader and writer are truly co-creators of the story. That's wonderful, unless you are an author, because then you don't get to participate in the connection, right? Like I don't get to see or inhabit the experience of the reader. I don't get to know what they like and what they don't like in any kind of direct way. And that lack of connection was really frustrating to me. But this was the era when MySpace was becoming a big deal. And I sensed in MySpace, I think we all did, my salvation. MySpace was going to be a way that I could connect to people. So there were about 200 people who'd listed Looking for Alaska as one of their favorite books on MySpace. And so I went around and I asked each of them to be my friend. And I sent each of them a message that said, "Thank you for reading my book, I really appreciate it." And that was born out of a genuine desire to connect to them. But I was told that it was very important to market. I had to be like a marketing genius if I was ever going to make it in publishing. I had to like I don't know any marketing lingo, or I would use it right here, because I want you guys to feel like I'm one of you, but I don't know how. So I'm just going to tell you how I thought of it, and then you can think of what the marketing lingo for this is. I wanted to take my message, which was buy my new book, An Abundance of Catherines, and I wanted to ram it down their throats so far that like when they eventually vomited, like money would come out that would be my money. That was my basic marketing strategy. And so I wish I could say like that I just sent those 200 people one email asking them to buy my book, but in fact, I sent them many emails of increasing desperation. And that was very authentic. It was entirely authentically desperate. That 16-year-old kid wearing the academic decathlon medals and the gold bow tie was truly being himself when he was begging people to buy his books. This was, of course, totally ineffective. But despite my attempts to alienate my audience, the internet was already changing. And even though I didn't have more readers, I already felt much better connected to them because of tools like Friendster and MySpace, and then Facebook, library thing, Goodreads. People were talking about my books. There were little communities popping up of people who'd read them and liked them and wanted to talk about them with other people. And that was very exciting for me. I started to feel like I was making stuff that I found interesting with people I found interesting instead of just for them. And then in 2006, I started watching this guy, Zay Frank, who made a show called The Show with Zay Frank that happened every day for a year. And the community of people who watched this show, we called ourselves sports racers. And we did all kinds of things in response to Zay's videos. Like one time we made the earth into a sandwich by having one person hold up a piece of bread at one point on the earth, and then on the exact opposite point of the earth, another person held up a piece of bread, so it was an earth sandwich. And then another time we played Zay at chess, and we beat him. Another time we dressed our vacuum cleaners up as people. These were very strange and silly projects that we were doing together. But for the first time, I felt like I was part of a community where I got to talk about stuff that was really interesting online and do these projects that were really fun with people who were really smart and interesting. And I hadn't felt that way since my dad first told me that the internet contained nerds, a few of whom were girls. So in 2007, my brother and I started a collaborative video blog called Brotherhood 2.0 that was based off of Zay Frank's show. To start, we had about 300 regular viewers, most of whom were fans of my books. And then after 6 months, and 100 videos and thousands of hours of work, we still had about 300 regular viewers. I'm often asked if I saw Brotherhood 2.0 as like a marketing opportunity. I didn't, and if I had, I would have quit, because I didn't get any new readers. We didn't really have any new viewers. Our videos didn't have that many comments or likes or any of the traditional metrics. But I knew we were on to something. Sometimes the really important metrics aren't the obvious ones. In March of 2007, I had this terrible infection behind my eye. I'm a bit of a hypochondriac, but I also have a lot of weird health problems. So I had this bad infection behind my eye, and I had to be hospitalized. And my brother asked people to take pictures of themselves with stuff on their heads to cheer me up. We had 300 viewers, and 275 people sent in pictures. That's when I knew we were on to something, and that was the metric that mattered to me. Here is a little bit of that video. Thank you for not being one of them. So we did think to ourselves, maybe having people put stuff on their heads isn't the most interesting thing that one could possibly do with an audience. So by September, the nerd fighter community, as we'd come to call ourselves, because as Scott said, we fight for nerds and we celebrate intellectualism, had started working with Kiva.org, a website that allows anyone to be a lender to entrepreneurs in the developing world, and we'd become one of the largest Kiva groups today. Nerd fighters have loaned more than $4 million to mostly female entrepreneurs around the world. And then in December of that year, Hank and I decided to continue video blogging, although not daily. We now make one Blog Brothers video a week. And we organized something called the Project for Awesome. Basically, a relatively small group of couple thousand hardcore nerd fighters hijacked YouTube's algorithm, figured out kind of a way to hack it. And so for one day, the most discussed and viewed and top-rated videos on YouTube weren't about squirrels. Ooh. No. Hello? I'm back. I'm back? All right. That was scary. I thought for a second that like a cage was going to descend. I was going to have to fight Mindy Kaling to the death. I'm really relieved because I don't like my chances. So we hijacked YouTube. So for one day, the top-rated, most discussed, most viewed videos on YouTube weren't about squirrels water skiing or cats on Roombas or whatever people were watching on YouTube in 2007, but they were all about charities. And the Project for Awesome has since morphed into a fundraiser as well as a video project. Last year, Nerdfighteria raised over $800,000 in 48 hours for organizations like Water.org and Save the Children. And the conversion rates in Nerdfighteria, is that a marketing term, conversion rates? Because I've been holding on to that one in the hopes that you guys would be like, ooh, yeah. So the conversion rates, thank you, in Nerdfighteria continue to be really extraordinary. Like every year we send out this survey that's 30 minutes long, takes about 30 minutes to complete. It's insanely complicated and detailed. And of our 250,000 regular viewers, at least 125,000 people take half an hour to fill out this survey to tell us about their values and their priorities, and that helps us to guide the community's growth in the coming year. We also have tremendous conversion rates for something like the art assignment, our co-production with PBS, where we talk about contemporary art. Artists give people art assignments, and then thousands of people around the world spend thousands of hours completing the art assignment. And we have people who transcribe and translate our educational videos so that we can share them with students around the world. We have people who meet in real life to do service projects or to visit museums. Like this is a map of all the Nerdfighter groups around the world. As you can see, we've caught the United States covered. We haven't really penetrated the vital market of Siberia, but we're working on it. Is penetrating markets? I had that one too. I was excited about that one. It occurs to me, though, when talking about all this stuff, that when we talk about being ourselves or being yourself or being authentic, we're never talking about it in the context of ourselves, right? We're always talking about it in the context of other people. I don't need to know how to be myself with myself. I don't know how to be authentic when I'm by myself. I need to know how to be myself with others. So I think what we're really talking about at its core is how to be a member of a good community and how to be a good member of that community. And I think if you are a good member of a good community, then they will guide you. Like in Nerdfighteria, I made these videos about giraffe sex. I've made 2 videos about giraffe sex that between the 2 of them have gotten 60 million views. So from a metrics perspective, the smart thing to do would obviously be to like continue making videos about giraffe sex or to found a new channel called youtube.com/animalmating or whatever. But when we asked Nerdfighters in that survey what kind of videos mattered to them, they didn't say giraffe sex videos. They said that our educational videos mattered to them. And so while a video about the history of Syria might get 1/10 the views of a video about giraffe sex, that's what mattered to them. So when Google came to us and offered us a grant to start 2 new channels, we decided to stick with educational content that was core to the experience of being a nerd fighter instead of, you know, mating monkeys or whatever. And so we started SciShow, where Hank talks about science, and Crash Course, where the 2 of us talk about subjects that interest us, from AP-level physics to AP-level world history. Here's a little clip of that.
So Franz Ferdinand wasn't particularly well liked by his uncle, the Emperor Franz Joseph. Now that is a mustache. But even so, the assassination led Austria to issue an ultimatum to Serbia, whereupon Serbia accepted some, but not all, of Austria's demands, leading Austria to declare war against Serbia. And then Russia, due to its alliance with the Serbs, mobilized its army. Germany, because it had an alliance with Austria, told Russia to stop mobilizing, which Russia failed to do. So then Germany mobilized its own army, declared war on Russia, cemented an alliance with the Ottomans, and then declared war on France because, you know, France. So what did we take away from the so-called Great War? Well, not much. Let's go to the thought bubble. The Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I, fixed the blame for the war on Germany, which proved ruinous to the German economy and destructive to its political institutions. And unless you're really nostalgic for totalitarian communism, you've got to say that World War I was also a disaster for Russia because it facilitated the rise of the Bolsheviks. The Russian Revolution had 2 phases. In the first phase, called the February Revolution, because get this, it occurred in February, army mutinies and civil unrest forced the overthrow of the Romanov dynasty, which had been in power in Russia since, like, forever, to use a proper historian term. The monarchy was replaced by a provisional government led eventually by Alexander Kerensky, who made the terrible decision to keep Russia in the war, which led to the October Revolution, so-called because it happened in October, in which Vladimir Lenin and his Bolsheviks took over, famously promising the Russian people peace, bread, and land. To which the Russian people responded, "Hey, you just named 3 of our favorite things."
So that's a little bit of Crash Course World History. Thank you. This strategy of listening to our audience, even when metrics might tell us not to, has worked out really well for us. It's worked out particularly well, actually, for my brother Hank. Hank has gone on to do a lot of things very successfully. He founded VidCon, this huge online video conference that attracts more than 20,000 fans of online video to Anaheim every year. He co-created the Lizzie Bennett Diaries, an Emmy-winning adaptation of Pride and Prejudice that really reinvented a lot of the ideas around narrative web video. He started DFTBA Records, this large merch company. Most problematically for me, he started 2D glasses. So one day my brother called me and he said, I was reading a comment from a nerd fighter, and they said that they wanted to go to a 3D movie with their friends, but they can't because it makes their head hurt, and is it possible with science to make 2D glasses? And I was like, yeah, it's really easy, actually. You just have the same polarization in both lenses. So I need $2,000 because I'm going to get 5,000 pairs of 2D glasses made in China. And I was like, that is the worst idea I have ever heard in my life. And 100,000 pairs of 2D glasses later, my brother. Anyway, he's not here. I'm here. And while he was doing all that crap, I was writing books. My book, Paper Towns, became my first New York Times bestseller, but it only stayed on the list a couple weeks because nerd fighters, God bless them, buy everything in the first week. A couple years later, I wrote a book, Will Grace and Will Grace, with my friend David Levithan, where the exact same thing happened. And with both those books, I traveled around the country, and I would always hear from people in comments on Twitter and on Tumblr, why don't you ever come to Kuala Lumpur? Or nobody ever comes to Pierre, South Dakota. And I don't know how much you know about the economics of book touring, but it's pretty dismal even without flights to Kuala Lumpur. So that was just never going to happen. But I started to think to myself, since nerdfighters buy everything in the first week, it would be pretty easy to just sign the first printing of the book. And that way everyone who is a hardcore nerd fighter and really wants a signed book would get one, regardless of whether they live in South Dakota. And usually the first printings of my book were like 20,000 copies, so I figured it was 11, 12 days. But in fact, we pre-sold 20,000 copies within 48 hours, and I ended up signing 170,000 books, which took longer than 11 days, but was very fun. I like repetitive actions, and I might do it again, actually, because I really enjoy kind of monotonous work, and it's much better than writing. That book came out and had a very different life from my previous books. Instead of staying on the New York Times bestseller list for a couple weeks, it's now been on for more than 150 weeks, and very nice people went on to make a movie of it that grossed $300 million worldwide and became a great success. Thank you. Now, the story of that success is complicated, obviously, and multifaceted, and lots of people worked very hard on both the book and the film to make it successful, and I don't want to take anything away from them. But I think that everyone would agree. Is Mindy Kaling behind me? I think that everyone would agree that it wouldn't have happened without Nerdfighteria. Nerdfighteria was absolutely vital to this story. Oh, do I have to switch? I'm switching? Now I have twice the power. Sorry, I bet it's the way I put on my mic. I'm sorry. It's my bad. So, there's no way that it would have happened without the Nerdfighter community. And lots of people have seen that as me like leveraging my audience or finally finding a way to monetize or whatever. But I don't see it that way at all. I see it this way. We've been doing this stuff for years. It's just that we finally had a Hollywood-sized canvas to paint. You know? This whole idea that my audience is for sale or that my relationship with them is something that can be converted into value, I think is the wrong way of imagining it. Like, the trust that I have in them and the trust that they have in me is incalculably valuable. I guess there is a way to sell it. But the problem with selling a long-term relationship with your audience is the problem with selling anything, which is that then you don't have it anymore, right? Like, once you've sold something, it's gone. I'd much rather continue to have that relationship. It's very, very important to me. And I believe that what's good for your community is always good for your business. And what's bad for your community is always bad for your business, even if it brings in money. So I want to leave you today with the story of the most important thing that ever happened to me on a couch other than losing my virginity. The story of hanging out on a couch with my friend Hassan. So my friend Hassan is Kuwaiti. He lived in Chicago for many years, and we were living together in the same apartment during the invasion of Iraq in 2003. And Hassan was very worried about his family. Didn't have any way to get in contact with them for a couple weeks. So he spent all of his time watching cable news coverage of the war, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was kind of annoying, and the only way to hang out with him was to sit next to him on the couch and watch the news. So I was sitting next to him on the couch watching the news one day, and Hassan was, angry. He's usually a little angry at the news coverage. But they were showing this house that had a huge hole in it that was covered over with plywood, and on the plywood was scrawled very angry-looking Arabic graffiti. And the newscaster was talking all about, like, the anger on the Arab street and the hatred in the heart of the Iraqi people and stuff. And Hassan started laughing, and I said, "What's so funny?" And he said, "The graffiti." And I said, "What's funny about it?" And he said, "It says, 'Happy birthday, sir, despite the circumstances.'" This is a very, very important moment in my life, and there are two takeaways from it, I think. The first is that we have to imagine others complexly, right? Like, we have to learn to imagine that others are not merely rich or merely poor or merely Iraqi or merely males between the ages of 18 and 34 who have a choice when it comes to which deodorant to buy. Like, we have to imagine others complexly. And the other thing is that we have to know what we don't know, and we have to be honest about it, because if we lie about it, we are going to look like idiots. So I was at a Philadelphia high school recently, and I was very anxious because they are young people, and young people intimidate me. And I wanted to seem hip and young myself, so I decided to reference this. I believe she is a musical artist, but I'm not positive. This person, and I said, oh, it's like Keisha. And the people in the audience, maybe like 40% of the people here, but really full 100% of the Philadelphia high school students were like, Kesha. And if I'd walked into that high school and I'd just immediately been like, look, I am the kind of person who does not know how to pronounce the letter E when it immediately precedes a $sign, I would have been fine. It was because I tried to be something I'm not, hip and young and cool, that I had this disastrous moment that I'm now repeating. So here's what I've learned from Nerdfightarian, from all these years on the internet. If you allow a good community to guide you, they will show you yourself again and again and again, and you will be yourself within that community naturally. Like, if you don't mind, don't think about any of this for a moment, like in the context of like business or work or the very precise, exact target marketing, Salesforce clouding. But just think about this in the context of whatever part of your life. Like, think about something that you've done with other people that you were proud of. Maybe like building a playground with friends for your kids, or a project that you worked on, like a pitch that you worked on. You stayed up late with people who were really fun to work with, and you killed it. Whether you got the job or not doesn't matter. For me, it's my dad and the bench. That bench is gone, right? Like, it rotted away years ago. Everything goes, everything rots away. It doesn't matter, because on that day, I was myself. That's, I think, what we mean when we talk about being ourselves. I was sitting with someone I cared about, having made something that I was proud of, and I was telling my dad everything that I knew of the universe, and he was telling me everything that he knew of it, and we were also being honest with each other about what we didn't know. For me, that's what, like, marketing is, and also kind of what life is. Thank you.
John Green, everyone. John, thank you.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Have a seat, please. That was fantastic, John. What an amazing personal journey.
Thanks.
As you think about your writing now, having achieved all these great things and just the wonderful personality that's embodied in your journey, do you write differently? Do you approach it from a different mindset of super confidence, or?
No, I wish. It's hard. It's one of the things that's really challenging about writing for me is that every time I finish a book, I feel like I could never write another one. But that's also what's really exciting about it. So I felt that way now for 2.5 years, like I'll never write another book, but presumably I will, because I don't have another job.
Well, how do you approach writing? Do you wake up in the morning and say, it's time to write, and here we go?
Yeah, I mean, I have a day job making Crash Course and Mental Floss, the art assignment, the other stuff that we do, and I really like having a day job. Every time I haven't had a day job, I've sort of invented one. So I try to write, in a perfect world, I write between 7 and noon, or 8 and noon, okay, and then I go into the office.
And are just the ideas flying around and you just try to pick one? Is it
Yeah,
one
it's not hard
thing?
for me to come up with ideas. Well, I never have big ideas, like good, like vampires. in suburbia. I never had an idea like that. Or Wizard High School. I'm waiting for that idea, but mostly I have very little ideas.
Yeah, so at some point you get a thread and
Yeah.
out comes a book?
Just follow the thread.
And how does that turn into a movie? How's that process work?
Well, you sell the rights and then you hope for the best, and you have no say in anything that happens after you sell the rights. This was my fifth book, and I had a bunch of movie deals before, and so I spent a lot of time talking to various people, and I tried to pick the right people I really trusted, and that did me very well. Instead of sort of following the highest possible option, upfront money, going with the people who I thought would make a good film was pretty much my only good decision. Other than that, all the good decisions were made by other people.
Do you get to be part of it?
I was very lucky, yeah. I mean, I wasn't contractually part of it, but I was on set almost every day, and I got to be, I got to see a lot of audition tapes and have some, I definitely had a seat at the table.
And in the movie? Do you get to be in the movie?
That's a good question, Scott. Thanks for asking. I did get to be in the movie. I had a cameo. I had a line. Jackie, I'm so sorry. And they called me about 4 months after we finished shooting. They gave me a call. The producer called me and he said, "So I know you're going to see a first cut of the movie tomorrow, and I just want to prepare you for something. You got cut." So yeah, I had a cameo, but then I was canceled. I'm in the DVD.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not to
All
brag.
Right. So is this one of those things where you have this amazing book, you make a movie, and now here comes the second movie? Do you think to yourself, I've got it, now I know I have this figured out. I know exactly how to do this with the second movie?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm less nervous than I was before. I'm excited to go to Charlotte and, film a movie for a couple months. But I also, it's a whole different challenge. The Fault in Our Stars fell very clearly into a genre, the star-crossed lovers genre that has been well established by Love Story, which I kind of was writing against, but it's still within that world. Paper Towns is much less genre specific, so I think it's more challenging, but that makes it fun.
You made such an amazing point about being yourself and authenticity. As you see your work transform to a movie, do you still carry that authenticity of your voice through that whole process? Or?
I try to. I mean, I try to treat being on a movie set in terms of my social media outreach just like I'm doing anything else. And I don't really geek out or anything about that stuff. It's more like a construction set. They're building a new set every day than it is like a glamorous thing of my imagination. So I kind of want my readers to see behind the scenes a little bit. People worry that's going to ruin the magic, but I feel like it shows them how hard everyone works and how much they care about the story.
Oh, does that become a topic of video blogging then? Fox was really cool about letting me video blog from the set. They were a little nervous about it, but they were really, really cool about letting me do it. And then at first they made me show them my videos, and then slowly I just stopped showing them to them, and it's cool. So Crash Course and really your whole video blogging sensation as it developed, and thinking of yourself as a writer or an entertainer or an educator, do you put a word or label to it?
I mean, they aren't really separate things for me. It's all part of wanting to have a conversation with people I like, whether it's about world history or about the way that we approach dying or about the challenge of imagining others complexly, whatever it is. It's all part of that. So sometimes that takes the form of Twitter, sometimes it takes the form of video blogs, sometimes it takes the form of a novel.
Did you actually expect that to evolve to be formal curriculum in schools?
No, I never expected that Crash Course would be in so many schools. It's exciting to me because I think my hope is that it can be a nice 8-minute kickstart with a little bit of nuance, that can kind of kickstart discussion in a classroom and introduce a topic. But the whole idea of Crash Course is that, unlike a lot of the other educational materials out there, it isn't trying to replace the classroom. I like classrooms. I think they're really important and vital. So it's more, a curriculum supplement.
Do you find yourself thinking about pop culture or what's happening in the world and what's happening around us, or do you think more just how to educate in history and...
Well, I do. I mean, I think about pop culture and contemporary events a lot, but I don't know much about pop culture. Like, people always say that I have my finger on the pulse of the youth or whatever, and I don't. I don't, as evidenced by the Keisha thing. But, but I didn't know anything about teen culture when I was a teen, let alone now. But I just try to be as honest as I can about that.
Yeah, so you're speaking to a room full of marketers. You had great advice for us. I don't know, a couple times you were asking for some validation, so let me offer validation. That was wonderful. I think authenticity and speaking with an authentic voice is what we're all out to accomplish. Is there any last advice you'd have for us or thoughts on how we try to communicate to our customers, how we try to get our message across to our audience?
Well, I think especially when you're talking to young people, like we all talk about millennials and how to reach them. Just don't pretend. Don't front, to use slang from 12 years ago. Prove how hip I am. It just doesn't work. It feels awkward and cringy to me when people try to do that. And part of that for me is about becoming yourself and then having to become yourself again. Well, now you're older. Now your company is different. Now your brand is different. So, okay, I have to become myself again. Like, what does this myself look like? And how does this myself talk to people honestly and authentically?
Yeah, John, that is excellent advice. We so thank you and appreciate you coming to spend the morning with us.
Oh, it's been great fun.
Everyone, John Green.
Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Thank you.